Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Bad and Barred. It's your girl, Avi B. And on today, I have a very special guest. I am just want to say super thankful for the podcast. So far, it has really connected me with some dynamic Black women attorneys. I never expected this to happen. I was like, let me just put my voice out into the atmosphere because I have a lot to say. I'm a thinker, but I'm really a yapper. And I did not expect for the support to just come in from people that I didn't know in the way that it has. And so today I have with me Attorney Angie Holloway. Again, super excited to have this conversation. I wanted to just give you a quick second to share a little bit about you, who you are, about your brand, your firm, and all the things. So yeah.
Yeah, so good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Angie Holloway, and I am the managing and founding partner of Edmonds Law Office. It's a business healthcare firm in Atlanta, Georgia, and we help doctors and other medical practices kind of scale and grow and protect all of the things that they work so hard for without icky lawyering.
Yes. And that's my favorite part. When I was like looking you up on your website, like without lawyering without the ick. And I was like, yes, that like your site, your brand, everything about you was just real human, real, like not super stuck up, not like all the things you think of, at least the negative things when you think of about a lawyer, that's not what you gave at all. And I was like, yes, like this is the energy that we need in the profession, that I need to, meet more women like you. Because truthfully, like when I started off my journey, like I was very much like assimilating into the ick of you got to look a certain way, you have to talk a certain way, you have to be and exist in this profession in a certain way, and like to see you even on your site like in normal clothing and talking about things about yourself, like in your about you section that were not just about like your legal accolades. Like, I love all of that.
It was a journey. Like, when I first started, if you look at kind of like my first iteration of my website, it was very on the ick side, right? It was very professional, what they consider professional. I had, a gray suit. My hair was pressed. I had on like the soft beat. I had all of those things, like, right? Because I was trying to make sure that I assimilated and felt like I wanted people to trust my expertise and all of those things. But over the years, that has evolved. And I'm like, honey, this is who I am. This is how I dress. This is how I talk. And I found that being my authentic self really resonated with clients. Yeah. And like all the scaries about working with a lawyer kind of went away.
Yeah.
When they got to kind of see who I was. And my jean jacket, that's what you see me like around in the streets. I got a different jean jacket for everything. And so I'm like, why not have the jean jacket on my website?
I love that. Love that very much. Very much human, real, like not here for the chaos. Okay. So let's get into it. I want to talk about something that a lot of Black women are dealing with in this legal profession. A lot of women, a lot of people, lawyers, period, are dealing with, and that's burnout. And I know that when we talked a little bit, you had a very like transformative experience within your practice of law. And I, again, really connected with you on the fact that we were both civil rights lawyers. And that was a big part of your life and your work. But the reality is we pour a lot of ourselves into this work. And I left the firm that I was at a couple of years ago because what I noticed was these people were, I was about to lie and say great lawyers. They were okay lawyers, but because they were not taking care of themselves, like because they weren't tending to their bodies, like most of them had some type of ailment, some type of something, like family relationships awry, like all of these things, and they just poured their life and soul into the practice of law. And, one of the attorneys that I work with, was like, I'm sure this profession is going to kill me. And, that for me, and this was somebody like who was a superior to me. And so that for me was a turning point. And I was like, okay, I got to get out of here. Because if you know that and you're content, not content, but you're accepting of that, I know that you have expectations of me that I'm not willing to give. Like, I got to get up out of here. Because when it came to time for me to have a kid, like, I was there. I took my postpartum. We only had 6 weeks. I took my postpartum leave.
6 weeks?
6 weeks. And then I had to use all of my sick time, all of my PTO to extend that another 6 weeks because I was like, I need more time. Like, I'm not ready. And they were like, just bring the baby to work. Like, bring the baby with you. We're raising young civil rights babies too. And I was just like, mind you, I had my baby during COVID. I'm not bringing him anywhere.
Oh my God.
Even if it wasn't COVID, I wouldn't be bringing him anywhere. But that's just, I think a lot of the nature and the culture of the practice of law is to give, and overexert yourself. And I feel like it's honestly like low-key a factory where they just chew you up and spit you out and move on to the next. I even encountered this like during trial, like with people with health concerns pushing and grinding. And I just know now, like in my 30s, I don't want that for myself. And I was really encouraged by your story. And so I want to know, for one, like what your experience was like before you decided to venture out in the legal profession. If you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I started my firm 2020 as well. The end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And so my last job before I went out, so my plan A, was work for 5 years. You know, I had done nonprofit, I had done a clerkship. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do 3 or 4 years with this firm before I venture out and do my own practice. Plan A didn't happen, okay, because it was so stressful. Not in like the challenging kind of like academic sense where I need to learn these new things, but in the sense of like my personhood was not valued.
Yeah.
Right. And so with this firm, not only was I not getting paid, so that was kind of the first issue that I had working in a small environment. There was financial issues that I wasn't privy to before I came on. I had to front the firm costs. So we had to travel. I had to go to New York, Colorado. I mean, we had offices in different places. So I had a case, the 8th Amendment case in New York, and went to go and pick up my car and check into the hotel, and it wasn't paid for. So I called my partner and I'm like, hey, like, you know, I'm here, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, well, can you just put it on your card and we'll reimburse you in 60 days? I said, 60 days?
Oh my God.
So here we are having this conversation. I'm at the counter. Okay. This is my first job making decent money. The first 2 jobs it wasn't. So I'm like, I can't afford to front the firm and wait 60 days for reimbursement. He was like, that's our policy. Ah! Yes. So it was like, that's just an example of one of the instances. I had another instance where it was 11 o'clock at night. I was at a basketball game with my then boyfriend. And he called me and was like, hey, I need you to come to the office.
To do what?
Correct. And I was like, well, you know, I'm out. Like, it's 11 o'clock. I'm not coming to the office. He was like, if you want your job, you will. So anyways, my boyfriend at that time, he went with me to the office. I ended up having to pick up something that he needed, and we were flying out to Colorado the next day. Anyways, at that point, I was like, this isn't going to work. Because that was a weekly occurrence where I was not respected, right? I got in trouble because I wouldn't hang out with the white male associates at the firm, right? There was one other Black woman, and we were like besties. We were hanging out, and she was in another office, but we would get up, and she would come to Atlanta when I was in Colorado, and I was criticized constantly for like not wanting to kind of take on that additional emotional burden of trying to do happy hours with the people that didn't really like me, right? And so we didn't agree on stuff. Their work was sloppy, in my opinion, and I told them. I was like, look, you didn't even research these exceptions, right? So there were so many things where it was like, this is too much. And it was like thinking back to the conversations that I had with my grandmother. I said, Grandma, like when I go to school, get these 7 years, people ain't gonna be able to tell me shit. And I remember those conversations because she was like, when you have credentials, you have options. Right? And so that always resonated with me. And I was like, I was at that firm for 4 months. After 2 months, I was like, I need to start looking. Right? So anyways, it was kind of messy because he found out that I was looking before I wanted him to find out, the partner. And he was like, are you looking for other opportunities? I was like, yes, I am. So that was a bad conversation. And then some more stuff happened. And I ended up just burning the bridge. I sent my resignation. I was like, I'm willing to give you 2 weeks. I would prefer not to. But as a professional courtesy, it was a blaze of fire.
Wait, did you do that already having another opportunity lined up?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. Because it was a mass exodus.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing for a job. A couple of the other associates were also interviewing for other jobs. And so the partner at one of the competing firms had reached out to this partner and was like, hey, all your associates have applied for this opening. So it was a little on the messy side, but I was just like, it was just too much, right? And then we were on Christmas break, and he was emailing me about stuff, which the firm was supposed to be closed. And so I was like, look, that week, I typed it up. I let my grandma look at it. She was like, it looks like a good resignation to me. And I sent it off, and I was done. And so I think I went back one day after that just to, a couple things I had to clean up. But no, I did not have another opportunity. I had been interviewing for a couple of roles. I didn't think they were a good fit. And then I was like, fuck it. Let me just start my own. I said, this isn't the timeline that I had planned, but it ended up working out, better than I could have ever hoped. So that was kind of my first burnout. And then the second one was obviously in my civil rights practice.
Yeah. So you became a solo or went out on your own, like within a year of graduating school. Is that right? Is that the timeline? Oh, you were there for a little. There was some time in between.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That is, first of all, the mess. My God, hate that. But I love the fact that you had like the encouragement and the support of your grandma, like the wise words of women resonating with me right now is really sticking with me. But also like to know that you trusted yourself and it was like, you know what, I'm gonna just bet on myself. Nothing ain't, if anybody, I can bet on me. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna make something shake. I love that. I want to know how you think the culture of the legal profession, kind of similar to what you were just explaining with the grind mentality, coming in at 11 o'clock, all of these things, how do these contribute to burnout? And do they look different for Black women versus other people in the profession? I know you talked about your experience with some of the white associates, and I have my own in a similar situation. So what do you think about that?
I think first, like the system, the law.
Yeah.
Already, it's a system of oppression, first of all. So us as civil rights attorneys, me as a recovering civil rights attorney, you're already like in a system that has oppressed you and continues to oppress you, but you're trying to use that same system.
Right.
So I think psychologically that does something to you. But second, like now you're 2%, right, of this entire profession, and people make you feel like you don't deserve to be there.
Yeah.
Through a series of microaggressions and all the things. And so I think the industry puts that on us. And then also I think there's a lot of pressure just us being Black women. So I think it's a dual pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like the superwoman syndrome you have, the cape, all those things that you have, the expectation that you can handle everything.
Yep.
Right? All of those things that are cultural, specifically for us. And then we go into these predominantly white spaces and it's doubled down.
Yeah.
Right? You have to prove and prove and prove and prove. And there's no benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think those things working together, like our cultural parts, and then as well as like this law in general being very icky and kind of like this competition to who can sacrifice themselves the most.
Mm-hmm.
Those things work in conjunction.
Yeah.
And so then it literally creates a perfect storm in my mind for burnout. Unless you're somebody who's willing to break the mold. If you want to be quote unquote successful in the way that the law defines that, the industry defines that, like they don't expect you to have a life or a family. That's why they have alcohol at every event. So you can numb your pain. Right? That's intentional.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we have alcoholism and high rates of suicide and all of those things. Because the industry is like, hey, we don't give a fuck about your mental health.
That part.
If you want to succeed, you better be willing to sacrifice your family, your friends, your mental and emotional well-being, your physical health. I mean, all the chronic things that we go through.
Yeah.
It's a very traumatic industry. No matter what you're doing, you're taking on other people's problems.
Right.
So it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot. And I think you said a lot in acknowledging like the role that we play with the pressure that we have as Black women, the things that we put on ourselves. Like I was just reading somebody the other day, it was like, I'm bored as a Black woman. I'm about to go get another degree. And it's just like, we are naturally, I think, driven people, but also like all of this external pressure to achieve and excel and achieve and excel to prove ourselves and to prove our work is breaking us down. Black women have the highest rate of autoimmune diseases and autoimmune disorders. And a lot of that is related to stress. And I recently had a wake-up call when I myself was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And I've been very much like healthy my whole life, like worked out all the things, but I have always been stressed since I told my husband this the other day, like since entering this profession, that's starting back in law school. It's stressful. It naturally is. And you know, there are safeguards that I think we can try to put in place. But the larger piece that you acknowledged is the systemic nature of oppression that is related to this profession, to the courts, right? Because what people don't realize is that a lot of what we want and what we need as a people cannot be obtained through cases and case law and courts. Like, I'm an abolitionist and that's how I operate from that perspective. And there's also often like this conflict between the work that I'm doing as a civil rights lawyer and seeking the outcome from this naturally oppressive system that was not built to bring about justice for anyone. That actually does further harm. You go into court. Let's say you got a simple traffic ticket or a simple misdemeanor. You're going to go to court, at least in North Carolina anyways. Your case is going to get continued 11 times. You got to take off work to get there. They're going to say, oh, we not ready. Oh, we need to do this. Oh, we need to do that. You either plead guilty. You know, very few cases go to trial. Less than 3% of cases go to trial. I genuinely believe, as a sidebar, that if more cases went to trial, the courts would shut down. But you go, you sit, you wait. And then at the end, you pay all these fines and fees. And if there is a victim in the case, a lot of times they aren't ever heard or listened to. And so it's this system that is causing harm that we are looking to, not we, but that everyone, the community is looking to for justice. And I often tell people like justice isn't happening here. Like this is the way that we do things in the US. Is also why I sought out a restorative justice practice to learn how to do justice in community and to do community oriented work, because I got into criminal law and felt like I was funneling in the system, like I was a part of it. And as lawyers, we are gatekeepers, honestly, because we are kind of participating in these systems. And so I appreciate that you've decided to break the mold and say, I'm going to redefine what this looks like. And I'm not going to let it like tear me up and tear me to shreds. But I want to talk about what it took for you to get there. Yeah. Like, we know your experience, but how did you get to the point where you were like, you know what, no more, enough is enough?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that I got hit over the head. That's actually what happened to me. It wasn't like I was proactive by any means, right? So I had a series of health issues, right? So it got to the point I was throwing up every day.
Wow.
Could not keep food down. I was losing weight like crazy. I had headaches every day. It was just like debilitating. Then I got into a car accident. Was hospitalized from that. Then I had like short-term memory loss. It was like all these things that were happening. And that was when my practice was the busiest. I had an associate. I had 2 support staff.
Wow.
And so I didn't listen to the prior indications that I was burnt out, that something was wrong.
Yeah.
So God was like, okay, you don't want to listen? How? I'm going to hit you over the head, right? And so when we don't listen to those little whispers, those opportunities, those feelings, that intuition, then something major, a crisis, may occur, and then you have to redirect because of that crisis. So in the midst of all of this, my grandmother got diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, and so she was really sick. She started losing her memory, and then the disease just took over, and she was hospitalized. And so she was living with my uncle at the time, so I'm flying back and forth, right, from Atlanta to D.C. to spend time with her. And I think through the midst of me watching her in her illness take over, I had to have some conversations about, okay, is this what I want for my life, right? Once she passed, I was like, do I even want to be a lawyer? I had to ask myself, because there was so much of me caught up in, I think, my identity in being a lawyer because of the conversations and all the things we had discussed and how she raised me.
Yeah.
Right? Watching Matlock and all these different things we had talked about, right? And so if I wasn't going to do civil rights because it was literally killing me, what was I going to do? How was I going to help people? And if that was the whole reason I went to law school, then, what purpose do I serve now?
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm wrestling with all these different questions, talking to my coach, talking to my therapist. And they're like, this isn't the only way you can practice law. Who says you have to sacrifice your entire self and put yourself at the altar in order for you to make an impact or help people? And so for several months thereafter, I was like in the middle, like not doing much, not taking any cases. My coach was like, you need to start a transition plan. I did not transition. I was like, this is it. I'm done. I can't do this. And so I took a huge cut financially.
Yeah.
Right? I was making very good money. And then people that tell you that have small firms, you got to struggle. And I made, a lot of money in my practice. But when I transitioned, I was making zero.
Yeah.
Bills were still coming.
Yeah.
I took a 70% pay cut that year.
Ooh.
And it was a huge pay cut. It was hard.
Yeah.
But I would do it all over again. Because if I didn't, then what would have been the consequence for me? So it was very hard. It was a very, very difficult, trying time. And I did get hit over the head because I didn't listen to the signs.
Yeah.
But now that I'm on the other side, I appreciate kind of all of the uncomfortable conversations I had to have with myself.
Yeah.
About like my identity and who I was, and even like my name on IG, it used to be my people's keeper. And I changed that because I'm like, I need to keep myself right now.
Ooh, that part.
So it's like, all of the things that we, like the titles and the accolades and all the things that are important to us in one respect, but also, okay, who am I outside of that? And those were the conversations that I had in order for me to get to where I am now, where I'm doing a practice that I actually love and enjoy and love to, meet with my clients and do the complex transactions and all those types of things.
I love that so much. I feel like you are speaking to my soul because I'm literally grappling with this right now. Like, who am I outside of this work? Like, I went to school to do civil rights work. I started an NAACP chapter on my undergraduate campus. Like, I have been an organizer. I have been involved in the movement work for as long as I can remember. This is who I am. This is my identity. But at the same time, like, for how long do you grind yourself down for the sake of others' well-being? And for me, what does it look like to potentially transition into something else, but also still like support my people. Like it can look different. I don't have to be doing it through litigation. I don't have to be doing it as a full-time job. Like how can I still be loyal to and uphold the work of my ancestors, but also like take care of me too. And this is particularly important right now because I think Black people are at a point in time in which, we're like, we're taking our rest. Like we not about to be on the front lines involved in all of this chaos. And yesterday I listened to Native Land Pod with Angela Rye and Tiffany Cross and Roland Martin. And they were talking about how frustrated they are with millennials and with Gen Z, like not picking up the torch. And they were saying all that we have done is withdrawn from the bank of like civil rights work and civil rights justice movements. And we haven't made any deposits. All we do is withdraw. And then we sit back and say, I'm tired. I need to take my rest, when those that came before us didn't get to just say, I'm tired, didn't get to just lay down and rest. And I feel like the conversation lacked nuance. I feel like they were going to talk about that they should have a millennial into the conversation because I have so many thoughts about that. I want to hear your thoughts about that. But for me, I'm thinking about how different it looks because I've also been like, Black people, like now is not the time to rest. We need to get involved. And then I'm like, girl, you actually might need to sit down a little bit.
Yeah. So for your first part about the podcast, I think it's interesting to think about generational differences with respect to like advocacy and civil rights work, because I think mentally they're like from a survival standpoint, right? They're like, civil rights or else, right? It's a totally different mindset. And I really do honor and appreciate the work of our ancestors and the things that they've done. But I think there's a different awakening in us as to sacrificing our bodies and our humanity for a country that kind of repeatedly shits on us, right? And so I think it's no longer a conversation of this is what I have to do in order to prove my loyalty to the culture or to the community. Like, I feel like that's not our mentality anymore. And I think that the way that we show up is different. There's not just one way. It's not just taking to the streets and marching, right? There's people can show up or not in the ways that, align with their interests and their capacity.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. If I don't have capacity, then I can't take on another thing because I can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
So I think, kind of like that old school mentality of like, you got to sacrifice everything for the movement, that's dead and gone. And if they want to kind of help and raise up and influence the next generation of leaders, whatever that looks like, it's not going to be by kind of perpetuating those same ideals.
Yeah. For me, I think that there's a big difference in the way, and this is like no like down on boomers and things like that, but the way that they showed up in community versus the way that they passed the torch for community, like they're not the community that that they were raised up in. The grandmamas ain't grandmama like they used to grandma. That just is the reality. And so sure, I can pour in and show up to the community meetings and show up to city council meetings if I have community that is going to go with me, support me, hold my baby while I'm there when I speak up. Like, I can't be burnt out. Like, for example, myself, right? I told you today, like, my son was up all night long. I was struggling to get out of bed this morning. Like, if I had community that was surrounding me and supporting me in the way that I needed to, then sure, I might have greater capacity to go and do this or do that. But our community is so different. Yes, it is. It looks completely different than, for example, what was happening in the civil rights movement. Like, they had the Black church. The Black church was a strong pillar. It was an organization. It was a space of movement. It was a space of community, though, where they could go and think innovatively and support each other, love on each other, and collectively come together and grieve, but also strategize. The Black church doesn't serve that function anymore. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that we have largely sold out in the Black church to white supremacy, truthfully. And that's another conversation for another day. But the way the community looks now and the way the community looks then is different. And I think some of that is partially because of technology. Some of that is the way that our community has been fractured geographically. There's so many factors to consider when thinking about that. But I have really been grappling with that because I'm like, why aren't people showing up in the same ways? And in reality, I think that has a big part to play.
Yeah. I mean, if people don't feel like showing up results in change, then people check out.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem as well, is like, you feel like you're doing all of these things and you're not seeing kind of some of those tangible outcomes that you would hope to see, people get discouraged.
Right. And
a reel is not going to, change that discouragement over how many years of disappointment. Now, of course, I think there's something to be said about hope.
Right.
But I think, you have to be realistic about what's going on and whether or not people are willing to sign up for the game that's rigged. I think that's the real question. Like, people know the system is messed up. People know it's not by accident that our communities were broken up, that we got redlined, and our housing communities have less resources, and our schools don't have all of these different things that are working in tandem.
Yeah.
In order to disenfranchise us, right? And so I think sometimes people get discouraged, and I think that older advocates and civil rights people need to tune into that so they can get more people to buy in. But I still show up in the ways that I can.
Right.
I do pro bono work. I help. I do these communities, law clinics. I do different things that help serve in the way that I can serve.
Right. With the capacity that you have, though.
Correct.
Yeah, I do think that there is something to say about like the long game of the work that the civil rights movement and organizers from that point in time were engaged in. I don't think that they saw things from an instant gratification standpoint in the way that we do things. We have the
mentality.
Exactly. Yeah, where we want to go to a protest and then the next day we want to see the legislation changed. That's not the reality. Like, it is a longer game. And, from some of the readings that I've done from previous civil rights activists, it's like, we knew that what we were doing, we may not see the change in our lifetime. And I do think that that is a flaw of our generation, is that we need to see it. We need to see it or we ain't gonna do it. Yeah. So thinking about like having 7th generation thinking, as we talk about in restorative justice, to say like, maybe I won't see this in this moment, but maybe later on down the line, like my children's children, this will impact them, is important to have. But also, yes, to showing up in the capacity that you have. And for me, like, yes, that looks like civil rights litigation right now, but that is just my day job. And for me, realistically, like, I'm not showing up to no protest right now. I ain't got it in me. I will protest with my Black dollar, though. Like, I am now being super conscious about where I'm choosing to spend my money, because if organizations and these corporations, majority of whom don't give two shits about Black folks, continue to perpetuate like these anti-DEI things and just in general, like inhumane practices, they're not gonna get my Black dollar. That does create some inconvenience for me. Like, I haven't shopped on Amazon in months. It was easy for me to just put in a little order and get it here in 2 days, but I'm trying to be conscious of that because I don't like the billionaire class. I hate it. And so I'm choosing to focus my efforts that way because that is what I have the capacity for. I don't have the capacity to be doing no pro bono clinics right now. But shout out to you.
You're doing the work. You're doing the work in civil rights. That is your pro bono.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't know how long I'm gonna be doing it, but yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I don't think there's any one way to show up for the movement.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
It's like stop putting expectation on people what they should be doing.
Yeah.
People can show up the way that they can.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Leave it at that.
Exactly. The last thing I wanted to talk about is what practical steps you've taken to recover from burnout, or things that you've implemented, like safeguards to prevent it from showing up in your life again.
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole bunch of self-care, honestly. I think that, I know people kind of overuse the word, but it's like on my calendar, right? So it's really funny, but like I usually read for fun, not for work, 5 hours or so a week.
I love that.
And that's like one of the things I love. I love reading romances and mystery and thrillers. And so, like, even this morning before this call, I was reading. I read for an hour. And so my husband will come in and he's like, okay, it's leisurely reading time. And I'm like, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, it's just that's like on my calendar. It's something that I do, and it's a way that I show up for myself. So I do that. I have yoga twice a week. I lift heavy. I'm a weightlifter.
Me too.
I work with a trainer, and I'm like maxing out, and I'm doing those things. And so I lift 3 to 4 days a week. I hike 2 times a week with my dog at least, and then I walk him in the neighborhood. So like being out and in nature and close to the sun, those are things that help me. And then I have a lot of boundaries the way that I run my practice. So when I started, it was like I had so much work. I had so many clients, so many appointments. I have days where I talk and days where I don't. Mm-hmm. So half the week is like talk days, right? So Mondays and Thursdays, I'm talking. Mm-hmm. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that's my work day, right? And so to have balance, so it's not where you feel like, okay, I'm talking every day. I'm doing legal analysis every day. It's like you have, kind of work with in the times when you're the most effective, right? I don't do work at 6 o'clock at night. Right. Because that's not when I have a lot of brain energy. Right. Right. So I need to draft. I'm going to get up and do that right after my leisurely reading. Yeah. So I think creating a schedule. That's good. As lame as it sounds, it kind of holds you accountable. And then I have a therapist that I see. I just started doing acupuncture. I have massage once a month. I go to Jeju, which is a Korean spa. Me and my mom hit that up. So it's like I have a whole list of things that I'm doing to keep my stress in check. Yeah. And it really has to be that kind of approach. If you just say, oh, I'm going to take care of myself, there's nothing to hold you accountable. So there has to be some kind of metric. I'm going to dedicate this many hours per week to self-reflection, to meditation, to prayer, to whatever that is. Yeah. And I find that that's really helpful for me as a schedule person. Yeah, me too. I used to say type A. Now I'm type A with some workaround. But I love that you're talking about being intentional about it, and the importance of actually building it into your schedule rather than just saying I'm gonna do something and then hoping then your schedule gets full with work and with this and with that. I also love that you're very well rounded as a person. You read, you hike, you care about those around you. I love that so much. And for me, I think, in addition to self-care, community care is also super important. And I've been working to build relationships with people in my neighborhood, which is kind of taboo because people around, people don't do that anymore. Yeah. But me and my neighbors, a group of us have cultivated such strong relationships. The mom group, we've formed a little mom group where we just check in once a week. How you doing? What you got going on? How's all the things? We meet up randomly at the playground with the kids. The community care aspect is so, so, so important for me. And that is one of the ways that I am caring for myself is connecting with other people, listening and sharing stories, telling stories, hearing other people's stories. Those are things that feel good to me. In addition to, like you said, working out. I also am a weightlifter. I get up at 5:30 to get to the gym to lift weights in the morning because I want to do it before my baby wake up and get that burn, that energy.
And so, yeah, there are things that we can do. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight is something that you said when we first started talking about your experience at the firm. And you said that there was another Black woman that you were locked in with. Statistics show that Black lawyers do better in environments with other Black lawyers. And so it is so important, even if y'all are not in the same firm. I don't think I have worked at one firm where there were other Black lawyers, but most of the time I have been in spaces where I'm the only one, or where there's like Black support staff and things like that. But I know that is true. I have experienced it real life, like where somebody can just understand you, where y'all speak the same language. Like I can give you a look, you know what I mean, you know what I'm feeling. And also like you support me, like there's no weird energy. I have been in some spaces where there have been older Black women who feel like I should have got it out the mud and, did not show up for me in that way. But for the most part, like being in spaces with other Black lawyers feels very like good to my nervous system. And that is even when like I said, if we're not in the same firm, like I can connect with you. Like there was a firm when I first came out that was on a floor higher than me, and me and this one girl would just take the elevator down and like try to link up. Something so small, but it was like a woosah to my day to look and see somebody that was like me, who understood me in the practice. And so I know that there is power in community as well. I
love that.
Yeah.
I love that you know your neighbors. Like I know my neighbors are, and like we speak or whatever.
Yeah.
And say hi, but not to the extent that you did.
Yeah.
Like, that's like really, it gives me like old school, like Mississippi. That's where my family's originally from. Like everybody like sit on the porch, waving from across the street. Like it's like it is very community based.
Very much the vibe.
That versus kind of like this kind of Western individualism.
Yeah.
That we kind of, have adapted to.
We have.
People don't really, commune and know what's going on. Like my neighbor is having a new driveway poured, and I'm like, we got woken up yesterday. I'm like, dang, it would have been nice if they would have
said something.
No.
But that takes super like intentional efforts. And the good thing is like a lot of my neighbors are Black, and so it's a little easier. We have a community Facebook group where I posted in there and I was like, hey, I don't want to make this political, but for anybody who cares about what's happening in the world and wants to intentionally build community, just send me a private message. And surprisingly, so many people and I think that's naturally like the organizer in me, like the communer of the gatherer of people. So many people started sending me DMs, and I'm like, wow, okay. Like there are people who actually want this. I felt silly at first about doing it because we live in a very individualistic society, but surprisingly, so many people were like, hey, yes, I'm interested. Like I do care about what's happening in the world, and I do want to build mutual aid and community support. And I'm like, whoa. And now we get together on a weekly basis just to like bring the kids together now the sun is coming out. But for just the adults, we get together monthly, have a little wine night. We talk, we chill, vibes. So yes. Yeah, thank you. So I want to end on a quick little last minute girl time talk. I try to end with a fun topic. I don't know if this one will be fun, truthfully, but I've been having a lot of thoughts about this. If you could talk to one person in the administration, if that's the president, maybe, what would you say? What would you have to say to Sir Orange Man with his toupee?
I mean, I really don't have anything productive to say to Agent Orange, is what I would say. Because, I mean, first of all, would that be a waste of my energy?
That part.
I mean, he don't care what I got to say. Clearly, you look at the EO orders, I'm the person least on his care list, okay? So, I mean, I think at this juncture, it's really about, for me, just boundaries.
Yeah.
I'm just creating boundaries, trying to protect my peace to the extent that I can.
Right.
And, doubling down on self-care stuff. But no, I'm not, I don't have anything. I don't have anything pleasant to offer.
Same. I was thinking about this all morning. Like, what would I say? First of all, a conversation with that man would yield very much nothing because he's got the brain of a toddler. I don't know. My toddler actually might be a little bit smarter. That might be insulting to a toddler. He ain't got no brain cells. He don't care about nothing. He can't have an intellectual conversation. He don't. Ugh. So it would yield very much nothing. And then as far as people in authority right now, like if I could have a conversation with anybody, it would be the Dems who are in Congress. Because like, what the hell y'all doing?
Yeah.
Why are so many of y'all breaking off from the rest of the people to vote for stupid shit? Like, oh, that's who I would go and talk to. There are so many of them who I'm like, y'all are talking to us as if y'all didn't know Project 2025 was gonna happen. Y'all are like, oh my God, they're shutting this down. Oh my God, call your representatives. Newsflash, you are our representative. Like, I'm tired of seeing all these Dems on the news talking about call your representative. Hello, sister, do you know you are the representative?
Oh.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
So
since you brought up the Dems, if I had to say something to someone, it would be Senator Cory Booker. And I would just say, thank you, sir.
Period.
Thank you.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. To the Dems who actually have a backbone, yes. Him, Jasmine Crockett, and other Black Dems who are in there speaking truth to power, like that is my vibe here for it. But then there are also just a few who are just dumb. And I don't know if they have been planted by the Republican Party is what I'm starting to think of. Because like just was it yesterday? Like there were 4 Dems who voted in favor of the SAVE Act, and I'm like, the new voting act. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't you know that this is going to disenfranchise people? Yeah, those are the people that I would go and talk to. Nobody from this administration. Definitely not the man that's sitting in that White House. I don't have 2 words to say to him.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for indulging me. This has been a very fun conversation. I thank you so much for coming on to the show. And if there's any parting words that you want to say, let me know. But if not, this has been real.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
I love the space that you created. I love the podcast,
thank
your
you.
energy, your work.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing of what you're going to do next.
Thank you so much. And likewise, let's stay connected. Thank y'all so much for tuning into another episode. Until next time, bye.